5 of the G1 CLIMAX 34 is history, which means that it is time to recap and review that very night of G1 action right here on the MrWarrenHayes show in the under the umbrella of our ongoing coverage of the G1 CLIMAX 34. Ongoing daily coverage needs to be underscored here. We need to make sure that you all understand that it's just not, oh, whenever I pick and choose. No. Daily coverage. Every time there's a show, I'm here to talk about it. Who am I? I'm WarrenHayes. It's very nice to have you. Hope you're having a great start to your weekend. I know I am. And the G1 is starting us off with a show that is perfectly fine. Yeah, it's a good little show that we got. Nothing terrible, but on the flip side, nothing great either. We're not talking about anything yet that rivals Konosuke Takeshita versus Yuya Uemura from a couple of nights ago. No, this is a pretty standard, as good as not as good as it gets, but just a standard, fine, acceptable, well performed, well executed professional wrestling. But if you come and tell me, Warren, I watched it and didn't get the blood boiling, I'm like, no, I bet didn't do that to me. That's for sure. But let's get into this. Show. Start breaking things down as we usually do. We're going to start with the results. Of course, we're going to stick to the G1 matches themselves as opposed to the multi-man undercard part of the show. So this was all an evening of A-block action. Callum Newman defeated Shingo Takagi in what many could consider to be a surprise. SANADA defeated Gabe Kidd. Shota Umino defeated the Great Okan. What was I trying to say here? Zack Sabre Jr. defeated Jake Lee, and Evil beat Tetsuya Naito. So, I think the best way to go about giving any more thoughts is by just breaking down the matches and getting right to it, right? Starting off with Shingo and Callum Newman, where Callum Newman got the win here. They have a pretty good explosive start where you see Callum Newman trying to do the fast paced thing, and then Shingo does it as well, where he's like, no, bro, I can keep up here. So there's this little exchange between the two. Shingo Takagi beats him up on the floor, suplexes him back in the ring. Golden Triangle by Newman, no Shigami by Shingo, and like I said, there's always this idea that that they're trying to one up each other, and things start heating up, especially in Act 3, I guess is what you'd call it, of the match, where as Shingo tries to clobber Newman, who does a Spanish fly, goes for an Oz cutter, but Shingo bombs him right behind the head, just waits for him and clocks him right out of the sky, which was a tremendous and awesome and violent looking spot. He follows that up with the Poison Rana. DDT by Shingo. Callum pops right up out of the DDT and into the Oz cutter and wins the match. So, look, I really liked this opener. I thought it had a tremendous final stretch, which it was extremely solid, well-paced, quick, energetic, frenetic, big moves. That was all about fighting spirit, really. That was the thing. It's like, if you just want to clip the one part, which, you could do on Twitter if TVSI wasn't, didn't come after you every time you did post something, but you'd come into this if you were just to clip the final part where Newman pops out of the DDT and then goes after and then immediately wins the match with the Nos cutter on Shingo. you'd be missing a good part of the context of the match, which is why just watching clips is not watching pro wrestling. You know, it never has been and never will be. A clip is to highlight something cool that you saw, but within the context, it might be something else. And this is the case here. So if you look at this, you could if you look at the clip out of the context of the match, you can be like, oh, what is this kid no selling a DDT for? But that was the whole story of this match, was fighting spirit, getting back up after big moves, no sells. Like, it was just par for the course at this point. So it kind of made sense that because these two guys were firing each other up throughout. I think they did tremendous work in the 12 minutes and 51 seconds that was allotted to them. I gave this match a 3.5 stars. That's how much I liked it. I thought it was tremendous. A great opener. Then SANADA defeated Gabe Kidd, who starts working the previously injured arm because of the bicep. Commentary put that more than put that story back on our brains more than enough. That in their meeting last year in the G1, Gabe Kidd injured SANADA's bicep. This goes into the audience for a bit of nothing much happened with the going onto the floor. But you know, it's been all Gabe Kidd from the start. But of course, SANADA fights back. Wrist lock suplex into the buckle by Gabe Kidd was a tremendous spot. Magic screw by SANADA and a Shining Wizard. Pile driver by Gabe Kidd. Some back and forth. We get the dead fall. SANADA not advances, but wins. I forgot to mention, Callum Newman got his 2 points. He's at 4 now, and Shingo stays at 4. And in this case here, SANADA got his next 2 points, and that brings him to 4 as well as Gabe Kidd. So, as far as the match in itself goes, I thought this was okay. I thought it was fine, like nothing wrong with it. But, you know, I mean, when's the last time that anyone said, "Oh, this SANADA match got my blood pumping"? You know, I was up on the edge of my seat. I was walking and pacing. Like, no one ever said that. You know, SANADA is just like one of the driest performers alive, as far in pro wrestling, of course. You know, it is what it is, and I think Kidd did his best. I think Gabe Kidd is having a great tournament so far. I think he told a tremendous story here. He worked really hard. I like this match, but yeah, look, the good old fashioned 3-star match, you know, where I kind of liked it. I liked it. I thought it was a fine, a good little match. Nothing out of the ordinary. I don't know what to say more in this context here. Shota Umino defeated the Great Okan. After a strike exchange, Great Okan takes all of the action to the floor, of course. A drop kick gives Umino a hope spot. They trade some blows, strike for strike. It picks up. They start landing moves on each other. They start dropping bombs. And it all sort of wraps up nice and tightly with an ignition by Shota Umino. They, as well, when I say as well, like Callum Newman and Shingo, have a great final stretch where both are going after each other with, in different ways. Great Okan with submissions and strikes, particularly. Great Okan kicks out of a Death Rider, but Shota lands the Blaze Blade, followed by the Death Rider for the win. I really like this match too. Like, not unlike the first one, I thought it had a lot of I thought it had a lot of intensity. And what's really fun with this tournament, I find so far, is that Great Okan seems to have come alive and he's doing stuff. He's not content to just doing like your run-of-the-mill down the road things. He's breaking out things from his arsenal to the point that even commentary, even the guests on commentary, I think even Hanare who was guest commentating today. I think it was him who brought it up, where he specifically mentioned, oh, he's bringing out things from his offense, you know, that you don't see very often, and there's things that he hasn't even broken out yet, you know. You know, a lot of folks from the get-go saw a lot of special in Great-O-Khan, and when he came back from excursion and was presented to the New Japan universe. I'm sorry I said that. To New Japan fans, and a lot of us saw some real potential there, a bright future for Great-O-Khan, but for some reason, I don't know if he was doghoused. I don't know if he was just like doing a silent form of protest, or he was just disinterested. I don't know what was going on. I feel like for the past 18 months, 2 years, that Great-O-Khan has just been going through motions, just letting stuff happen and not being overly interesting. The matches that he's been having in the G1 so far have been the most interesting he's had in a long, long time, and this one is included. I thought he worked tremendously hard in this match, and showing off the great variety of pro wrestling that he knows and applying it in really entertaining, spectacular ways that help promote a great story in the ring. You know, the fact that he's transitioning from doing all these submission holds to just like straight punches and power moves. You're like, okay, you feel the progression of the match as he goes along, you know, wearing down his opponent. I mean, that's the thing, wearing down his opponent with some grappling submissions and trying to get, and then eventually just like trying to knock him out, give the knockout blow through straight up strikes or power, right? So I don't really have nothing bad to say about the match, other than, you know, it could have used a second gear. We could have gotten something a little more special, but at 3.5 stars, I think it's a fair landing spot. I don't think it should be any higher. Like, don't get me wrong, I really like the match, but I'm not gonna sit here and cheer and tell you this is the greatest match of the tournament. And I think we're a far cry from that. So yeah, and you know, Shota looked good per usual. Yeah, and it goes to my point that I made a couple of nights ago when I doing the daily coverage, is maybe some of the guys who are in the G1 this year feel like they also have something to prove to hang on to their spots, as everyone's focus is on the new guys, on the next generation. Maybe there's a lot of guys who feel like they themselves in this G1 have a spot to win as well, even though they're a little more tenured than a Yuya Uemura, a Shota Umino, a Yota Tsuji, Callum Newman, right? Maybe a guy like Great-O-Khan feels like that. You know, I talked about that in his circumstance. I talked about that when it comes to David Finlay, who I feel that might be an actual motivation, because Dave's been doing tremendous work in this tournament as well. So maybe this is just maybe this tournament, the way that it was laid out with all the new people and so on and so forth and how it was presented, maybe it was indeed enough to light a fire under these guys who over the past couple of years have been, you know, sort of surfing. Maybe you feel like they've hit a ceiling, they've plateaued a bit. Maybe this is good for them as well. Maybe. Shota Umino now has 4 points. Great-O-Khan still hasn't won a match in this edition of the G1, despite all this praise that I just heaped on him. He has not won a match so far. Zack Sabre Jr. defeated Jake Lee. Here's the good news. Here is the good news. We got a good Jake Lee match in this tournament. We got ourselves Jake Lee's least offensive match so far. How about that? And look who he's up against. Look who his dancing partner was. We need it. Jake Lee finally, like, shakes off, whatever was, holding him back. I don't know. It's not cobwebs, but anyway. And people, and I'm sitting here going, I don't want to say people, but I'm sitting here saying, finally, a good Jake Lee match, and look at who he was dancing with. Look who his dance partner was. One of the best wrestlers in the world right now. And didn't I say in the quick preview that I did on the last night of action, didn't I, on the last recap show, is what I'm trying to say. Didn't I say that if there was ever someone Jake Lee could have a good match with, it's Zack Sabre Jr., and if Zack Sabre Jr. can't get a good match out of Jake Lee, then we're doomed? Didn't I say something to that effect? Well, there you go. I mean, look, this was not the most exhilarating match. Again, I don't want to give the impression that I'm overselling this and that this is suddenly a tremendous pro wrestling match and that Jake Lee we have uncovered a something in Jake Lee that we haven't seen for years. No, I don't want to give that impression, because Jake Lee in this match is in control for most of it, actually, and to the point where you can see the finish coming. Where at some point in the match, about halfway, the amount of control Jake Lee has in this match, you're like, okay, you just sit back and you go, okay, Zack Sabre Jr. is winning. Zack is winning. This cannot be the opposite, right? Yeah, I mean, look, he even tried. Look, the story here is that he tries to play in Sabre's environment, trying to do grappling and stuff because he's tall, because he has the reach advantage and whatnot. But he tries, but Zack Sabre Jr. puts him in his place. At least at first, it goes to the floor and Jake Lee gets in control, starts working the ribs. The ribs have been a story for I can't remember the name of the muscle. The commentary said it, mentions it a few times, even before the G1. They were talking about his rib muscles, I don't know, that have been an issue for him. Well, Jake Lee, being a smart bastard, decides to go after. And he goes after them multiple times. After a long control segment, Zack Sabre Jr. explodes with strikes and open palms. You kind of get the impression that Lee was kind of fed up of Zack's striking. But, he gets back in control after that. But at the end, Zack wraps him up into that submission where he locks both arms behind the person's back with his legs, and it just looks extremely painful. And everyone immediately taps out, just like Jake Lee does. There's no struggle to get to the ropes. No, this shit hurts. I don't know if he's given it a name. Unfortunately, without the proper updates to NJPW1972.com, I don't. Well, let's check, because there was a time where Chris Charlton would update the English side with the English side with whenever Zack Sabre Jr. would win with a goofy submission, he'd update it with whatever name Zack gave him, right? And so I don't know if the name was updated, is what I'm trying to say. Because NewJapan1972.com is in such a state, and has been such a state for months, that all of the news and results and written word is on a blog on medium.com for if you want to believe that. Oh, there is a name. He calls it the Clarky Cat. He calls it the Clarky Cat. Well, there you go. So he locked in the Clarky Cat. How about that? Yeah, no, I like I like this. This was a good little match. I gave it 3 1/4 star. Good, again, good little match. It's just, Jake Lee's long control periods, they're long, and I don't know, he doesn't know how to fill a heat segment. I don't know what to tell you. Zack Sabre Jr. now at 8 points, undefeated in Block A. Jake Lee still at 2. And then our main event where Evil defeated Tetsuya Naito. There is just a lot of nonsense in this match. There's just a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of interference. I kind of regret talking about how the House of Torture interference is not so bad because they're cheating to win, and there's a little bit of interference, but at least you don't have the parade of interference where everyone starts running in. Well, everyone started running in here, and we should have known that was going to happen because Yoshinobu Kanemaru was added to the tour in the undercard, so of course he was going to show up. Yeah, there's just, this is a match that served to mask or keep Naito from having to do anything overtly physical. So nothing in here that he did looked bad or, continued to perpetuate the narrative from the past, from the beginning of the G1 in his regard. But also you just sort of shrug your shoulders and, you go, oh, stuff is happening. There's ref bumps and more ref bumps. And, you think Naito might overcome because he avoids getting powder in the eye by Dick Togo, which I guess is his thing now. And he avoids the whiskey mist by Kanemaru as well. And Bushi is there. He was on ringside commentary on the Japanese side, and he takes out Kanemaru. But and then there's one of these. There's a Destino that lands and hits, but Evil kicks out, and then he hits Everything Is Evil afterwards and gets the win. I don't have many thoughts on this match. I didn't like it. It's completely the opposite of what I like pro wrestling, why I like pro wrestling, and just some nonsense, really. That's all it was. 2.5 stars out of me. Evil also undefeated, up at 8 points in Block A, and Tetsuya Naito is at 2. So that's the do I have any recommendations? No. I don't have any recommendations for this show. It's pretty much, like I said, it's just it's inoffensive. Like, there's nothing outright, like, I didn't like the main event, but I'm sure some people will be like, oh, Warren, it's fine, but it's not for me. But I didn't think it was terrible, bad. It's just like too much nonsense, takes you away from the match. I don't like it. I don't think it's good. We're handing around mediocre territory here. So, skip the main event is nonsense. But maybe I'm not as sore about it because I was expecting it. Maybe because deep down inside I was like, well, look, it's Evil and Tetsuya Naito in the main event. There's going to be nonsense. There's going to be interference and nonsense. So that's kind of what happened. But I got no recommendations. As much as I've been talking very fondly of a lot of the wrestlers here, there's nothing where I could say, you need to go back and watch this. I think this is skippable. I think overall, night 5 is skippable. Unless you want to see what a not bad Jake Lee match looks like. If that's the kind of sicko thing you're into, please go right ahead. I forgot to talk about attendance, didn't I? I forgot to bring up the attendance. Well, why don't we do that before we start talking about positioning and whatnot. So where did it go? Did I lose my spot? Hang on a second. Okay, we're good. We're good. All right. I'm not editing this out so that you can see what kind of nonsense I get up to. All over the place I am, I should say. 1,616 in attendance for night 5 in Nagasaki at the Dejima Messe, Nagasaki. If we were to compare to last year's night 5, which was in Niigata, in Japan, at the Aor Nagaoka, 2,361 people were in attendance. That's a big difference. It was also one of the best shows of the tournament as well. It had that tremendous Okada Taichi match. It had that incredible Shota Umino Kaito Kiyomiya time limit draw. This was a big show, and clearly drew better business. Of course, we were not in the same town. The last time New Japan was in Nagasaki in the same building goes back to 2023, where they were on a Road to Destruction match, just like a Road 2 show. Nothing of note happening here, and it drew 1,380. So they drew a little more for a G1 show. I don't know if, off the top of my head, I look, certainly good for them for drawing more, but this is a G1 show versus a nothing Road 2 show from the year before, versus a nothing Road 2 show, right? And you only draw just about 300 people more. And it's a convention hall, right? That they do here. Let's see. According to their website, they say the convention hall capacity is 3,000. So like I is that 3,000 like for the one room, or is it multiple rooms? Like I don't know. Like I don't know. I couldn't say. I don't know how this venue was set up for. It's again, good on New Japan for drawing more, but if a G1 show only draws 300 people more than if it only draws 300 people more than a previous show, which was a nothing Road 2 show, I don't think it's that impressive. But like they still drew more. Am I splitting hairs? Am I being a dick? Maybe, But New Japan, they're getting a little weird with their attendance thing. Like they're patting themselves on the back for selling out Korakuen Hall for the 2 nights of the G1 that they're there. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry to say, if you can't fill Korakuen Hall with G1 matches, there's an issue. You know what I mean? I mean, good for you guys, but yeah, do you pat yourself on the back when something inevitable happens? Do you wake up in the morning and you pat yourself on the back for, I don't know, having a nice breakfast. You said, this is a nice breakfast. And your breakfast is just your basic, a bowl of cereal, maybe a toast and some fruit, just nothing out of the ordinary. You go, nice breakfast. I don't know if that's a good, I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. To be frank, let's look at the standings. So as we mentioned, Evil and Zack Sabre Jr. are up at 8. We have Shingo Takagi, Gabe Kidd, Callum Newman, SANADA, and Shota Umino, all with 4 points. Jake Lee and Tetsuya Naito at 2. Great Khan still with nothing. So unsurprisingly, Evil is in the conversation, and he's going to hang around till the very end, right? Whether he qualifies or not, he's either going to act as a spoiler or a potential spoiler. That's the thing. Like, as much as the matches annoy me, this is always this is Evil's biggest strength in the G1, is being this unpredictable force that either can go forward or will cost someone going forward, or will end up just like giving us a good scare, where we're like, oh, maybe if he wins this match, he's going to go forward. And he doesn't. You're like, phew, kind of thing. That's the biggest strength that Evil has throughout his entire year, is in these tournament situations, and the G1 specifically. He's a great tool to create anxiety and uncertainty moving forward. Zack Sabre Jr. at 8 points. As many of you know, he's my pick to win the tournament. And I'm kind of anxious at this idea that he's, speaking of anxiety, right? That he's, I'm kind of nervous and anxious that he's on this win streak so early. Because there are patterns in Gedo's booking that the guys who start off really well eventually drop off, start losing matches consecutively, right? So he's on an undefeated streak right now. He's won 4 matches, but you could see Gedo have him lose his next 4, and someone else just like come from behind and pick up the wins, like Tetsuya Naito, for instance. Let's take a look at Zack's upcoming matches, right? Or at least maybe towards the tail end, where things start getting really serious. Well, that's next time, but you see, like, let's say August 3rd, right? August 3rd could. There we go. He's got Shingo on August 3rd. Now, Shingo is not off to the greatest start. And he is also a guy that Gedo could position to come from behind, start picking up some massive wins. I think the Callum Newman loss here could be an indicator that Shingo is about to pop off, and that he's going to position himself to move on to the playoffs after. And we'll get a good sense of this, I think, in Osaka on August 3rd, when he faces Zack Sabre Jr. Then Zack is facing Evil on August 6th. And, these are 2 of the biggest threats, I guess, that Zack still has in his way. And I think this will be very telling as to whom's going to be moving forward, because Zack and Evil are currently tied, and they'll probably be at each other's throats. So it's all going to come down to a question of who's going to get the tiebreakers over who. This is where it's going to start getting really important. Not as much who's winning, but who's maintaining these edges over the other guys. And if Zack Sabre Jr. gets a tiebreaker over Evil, that's going to be significant, and I think it will all but ensure that he's heading to the playoffs. And then he will be facing Gabe Kidd on August the 8th at the Yokohama Budokan. And it's positioned very high on the card. It's the semi-main event, so that leads me to believe that there's going to be some major implications in this one, right? The main event of this show is Shingo and Evil, which absolutely leads me to believe that these are going to have very heavy implications for the tournament. So to be continued, but Zack again here in a position where he's absolutely at the very least going to be in the conversation. And on the final night, he will be facing SANADA, who I don't think is going to be a factor, but could end up playing spoiler here. Zack, we don't know what the order of the matches is either. Because it is the final night and they don't want to give the big plans away. But when you look at the rest, Shingo, Jake Lee, Tetsuya Naito, Great Khan, Shota Umino, Evil, that might lead you to believe that Shota might kick in a winning streak here to have, to mess around with Evil. Maybe that'll be something. Callum, Newman, and Gabe Kidd leads me to believe that neither are going to be factors at the end of the tournament. So maybe Zack Sabre Jr. and SANADA will have some very important ramifications. Sabre's tournament still has a lot of unpredictable elements, but he also has. He's going to face a couple of the stalwarts of G1s and of New Japan in Shingo and in Evil specifically. So I can see him dropping those two. I can see him losing those two matches. But the more I look at it, the more I find it's difficult to not consider him to be a part of the playoffs. Unlike other years, or the classic years where you just had one winner from each block going to the finals, there are many more moving parts now that there are, 3 guys essentially per block moving forward, moving out of the block to the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to keep an eye on and see how it goes. But as it stands, I think there's a lot of good signs that Zack is going to move forward into the playoffs, and not necessarily. The question is, will he finish? Will he win the block and go to the bye? That's the real question. We're going to see how this all develops, but definitely. His situation moving forward is going to be more of a question of who is he going to be able to get the tiebreakers on, and who will get the tiebreakers on him. Tetsuya Naito being at 2 either means he's not going to be a part of the playoffs, which would be weird, but also possible, but also weird. From a strictly business, and I'll tell you why it's weird. It's just from a strictly business standpoint, I don't see how New Japan can afford to not have Tetsuya Naito in singles matches on the cards. He's their most popular wrestler. He's the top guy. We saw it with the opening nights of the G1, nights 1 and 2, and the difference in attendance both nights had this year, from night 1 to night 2, despite being in the same city, in the same venue. I think there's it would be odd. It would be interesting, but it would be odd nonetheless. I can fully expect him to do one of these comebacks, right? One of the classic Naito come from behind victories, but I mean, he's given up already a couple of let me see here. Wait, I'm in the wrong block. There we go. Because he's already given up some significant tiebreakers. Like, he's, Evil has the tiebreaker on him, Zack has the tiebreaker on him, and Shingo has the tiebreaker again. So it's three guys that are all credible enough to move on to this to move on to the playoffs, and they all have tiebreakers over the champ right now. And who's left? Gabe Kidd, Callum Newman, Great-O-Khan, SANADA, and Shota Umino. All, in any other year, you'd sort of shrugging, Naito's got this, right? But there's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of unpredictability. So it's hard to pin down. But Naito is, up at plate with 2 strikes, having given up the tiebreakers from 3 of the top guys in his block. I mean, that's not looking good for him. And obviously, we're on elimination watch for Great-O-Khan. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. It's way too early to start talking about eliminations. If Great-O-Khan, he has 5 matches left, just like everyone else in B block. So if he wins every other one, he's going to be up at 10 points. He will most certainly be in a conversation moving forward. I think it's doubtful, but I'm not even ready to soft eliminate him yet because everything is so volatile. And don't forget, there's 3 people that move forward. So it's not as cut and dry as past years where you're like, there's one guy moving forward or 2. Now we have 3 people moving forward from each block. So he's on that watch. It's not looking good. He may be the first guy to be eliminated from the tournament, not just Block A, but from the tournament. You never know who's he got coming up next. Well, let's talk about the next night of, who's he got coming up next? Who has he got coming up next? So that would mean, that'll be in Fukuoka, right? On the second night of Fukuoka, and he will be taking on Jake Lee. So that's actually a toss-up when you think about it. It's really a toss-up. We'll have to see. But as it stands right now, I kind of said it. We're going to Fukuoka. Gotta get the U in there. Fukuoka. For the next 2 nights, starting tomorrow, July 28th. We're going to be starting off with some B block action in this back-to-back Fukuoka spin moment. Don't call it a tour. El Fantasma will be taking on Bolton Oleg. Bolton Oleg. Yuya Umera. I don't know. Oleg Bolton. Yuya Umera taking on Jeff Cobb. Henare will be facing and Yuya Umera versus Jeff Cobb. I don't want to give you the impression that I'm brushing this off. Umera's been on such a great streak in this tournament. I'm gonna be paying a close attention to this because with the way things are going right now, Umera should get the win over Cobb. And I'd even go as far as to say, get the win over Cobb, and then when all of this is said and done, toss our boy Yuya into a TV title match, on whatever upcoming tour they have with Cobb, and I'm sure that it will deliver. Yuya is turning into a star, in this G1. This is he's becoming an MVP here. Henare will be taking on Konosuke Takeshita. I'm excited for that as well. Dave Finlay versus Ren Narita. And Hiroki Goto in the main event, taking on Yota Tsuji, which has the potential to be sneaky great. You know, Goto's been tremendous. He's always been tremendous, but he's a fantastic worker. And, you know, Yota is in a position where he wants to prove himself and so on and so forth. So, look, this is all going down tomorrow, July 28th. So I will be back with another recap and review tomorrow. Just as simple as that. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, leave a like, subscribe if it's the first time that you're here and you enjoyed this stuff. You'll be getting all of my daily G1 recaps as well. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast application, well, 5-star ratings on Spotify and 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts are great as well. And all of these little actions help grow this podcast. So thank you all so very much for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.